So just want to put it in context a little bit. This is Eastern Kentucky. It's an Appalachian area. It's kind of as you're entering into the Appalachian area. And Menifee County, Frenchburg sits in Menifee County. And today, Menifee County is the smallest county of any of those in terms of population or what they have. If you can go to Powell County, there's a couple of towns. Probably each one of those towns are bigger than Frenchburg, I would imagine. You can go to Bath County. It has products. Owensville is probably bigger than Menifee County. And those are probably the ones closest to Menifee County size. Then you go to the other counties and they have bigger towns. Still very small towns, but they're towns with a Walmart, for example, and they've got restaurants and all this. Menifee County doesn't have that. Menifee County is very small. Today, I think there's around 7,000 people in the county, 700 in the town of Frenchburg, which is the county seat, which does not even have a traffic light other than a blinking caution light at a three-way stop at the only real intersection in town. And if you go back in time to when you were growing up, you said it earlier, basically you traveled on gravel roads, and I think I've heard Mom say that, you walk to the grocery, there's a path through the woods to get down to the store that they would go to. So there's probably some of that going. It's very, very different, even very different than when I was growing up. And my point is, the garage was in a very small community, even by Eastern Kentucky standards. And the influence and impact that garage had within that community was beyond significant. And this is what fascinates me too, is you got these Pughs coming in from Letcher County. And Letcher County, like if you went to someone where I live in Naples, Florida, and you introduced Letcher County culture and Menifee County culture, they may not be able to tell the difference. But if you're from Kentucky, you know the difference. It's not the same. And you have these Letcher County people go into Menifee County, set up, build log cabins, build a garage, and become influential within that context. It's really fascinating to me how all of that happened. And you can speak to this if you want in just a second, but I just wanted to lay that out as it's a very, very unique area, and the influence was huge. I know the influence was huge because, I can remember when I was little being in the garage, but they were all old by then. But the things, and I'll share a little bit and what people have shared with me about Pugh Brothers Garage, but it's just a really fascinating thing. And the way that I anticipate it, growing up a Pugh grandchild, so my cousins and second cousins and so forth are all probably in their 50s to 50s now. And we grew up like JP was the man. And even though he had an older brother named Irvin, who I think we talked about before, he went to Ohio, worked in a factory. It felt like JP was, and no slight to Irvin by any means, but because it was the other brothers were here in the garage working together. And the garage was this sort of significant thing within not just Menifee County probably, but within the community, even beyond the borders of Menifee County. JP seemed like, like this is not your average dude, like this is a different guy from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from being a significant sort of person, not in a, I don't know, not from an ego standpoint, but just there was something to me about Pugh Brothers Garage that was very significant, and it seemed to stand on the shoulders of JP. He owned it. That makes sense. But maybe you can speak to that a little bit. And I may be wrong. That's just my take.
No, they as everyone, there were some people liked them, some people didn't. Even the ones that didn't like them were friendly with them. And I can give you a couple of examples. I don't mean they didn't like them personally, but they didn't like their political view. They didn't like something. And it's like, I'll tell you this story, and you know the guy, I'm not going to use any names, but you know who I'm talking about. If I told you the name, you'd know. So this one person, and I used to see him down the garage a lot back in the day. We were both young. And he'd come in and he would talk to JP about he either had a truck broke or he had a engine that needed to be overhauled, and JP and this guy's dad didn't get along the best. They talked to each other. JP wouldn't work for him. He brings up in, JP said, take somewhere else. So this guy would tell his son that who his son is, would tell his son, say, go up there and get that old man to fix this for me. I ain't taking it somewhere else. It'll just break again. And so this guy would talk to JP, and JP said, I'm not working on that. I'm not working on it. I'm not working on it. And by the time it got done, JP had fixed it, wouldn't charge him but half price or something. That was JP. He would fuss and fuss at somebody because of what they had done or said. And then he might give them $100 mechanic job for nothing, not charge him. He did that. I'll tell you another little story, won't use any names. And I knew all of these. They were just a little bit older than me. And they worked at another garage as mechanics. There's three of them. Well, they come down to the garage one day and said, JP, they're trying to build a 1955 Pontiac to build an engine in it and souping it up. And said, we overhauled this car and got new pistons, everything, boarded everything. And we can't get it running, can't get it started. And JP said, well, it sounds to me like you boys are in trouble. The one that owned the car said, man, come on, said, help me out here. So after a little bit of back and forth, JP said, all right, go get it. So they had and pushed that car to the garage. And JP got under the hood, looked at it, and he said, try it. And it wouldn't start. So JP went and got 2 wrenches and come back, took a distributor out, turned it 180 degrees, put it back in, now started, fired up the first time. So they had put the distributor in backwards. And they won't stop. They won't stop. And then he could time. He didn't need a timing light or any of that. He could time beer. And he said, now you boys, so they pooling their money to pay. He said, hey, no, you don't owe me anything. You just remember this in case you have a customer that you have. He said, now it's all right to mess up on your own like this, but he said, you just make sure you remember this so you won't do a customer this way. And it wouldn't take a penny. Wouldn't take a penny from them boys. They're just big old teenagers, maybe 18, 20. But that's another thing about JP. He helped a lot of people. He helped a lot of people that nobody knows about unless you was.
And one of the things too, just to kind of fill in, and we can do another video on this if we needed to talk about it, but I don't want to do it in this. One of the interesting things about that community was politics. Politics was, it seems, kind of like today in a sense, and that it was there were some very firm on a local level on who you supported and who you didn't support. And so I can imagine the politics would play out for small businesses that were very influential back in those days.
They was probably 3 cliques in the county. Maybe, well, the Democrat, there wasn't very many Republicans. And the Democrats, there's 3 cliques of Democrats that couldn't stand each other either, based on politics. But I'll say this, Menifee County used to have a county fair once a year. The best one I've ever been to in my life. And I've been to a lot of county fairs back younger. And the strongest political person, opposite of what the Pughs was, I won't call their name either, but he was on the fair committee. They had a committee, business people. And he come down and he'd said, and him, JP had sat and talked, and JP would support the county fair. The business people put money in. I mean, they sponsored. JP always sponsored. Even though there's on different sides of political fence, they support each other in the community. They did do that. They supported each other in the community. And I've seen that happen different times. And it was like, well, the same guy. I bought insurance from him when I was 16 years old and kept it till I had to change because it moved. And they, you take care of, even though you're different politically and strong, different politically, you
just identified the guy, right?
For the people that's from up there, yeah. I liked him. He's a good guy. I liked him. I'm still visit with his wife occasionally, his widow.
Yeah. Talking about the garage and just in the context and the what it meant to the community and all of that, I'll tell you, for me, was given me a broader picture than just growing up. I mean, I'm a Pugh. JP is my great uncle when I was a kid, growing up. JP was around, and we would always go to church there at the Dan Ridge Church, and JP was always there. So, but it's different when you hear someone from outside the family's perspective. So, for anyone who may be watching that is not as familiar, there was a movie and a book recently, Hillbilly Elegy, I think is what it was called, but it really spoke to the Appalachian Highway, which is where all the people from the Appalachian area left, and they went to factories in Ohio or Michigan, and a few of them in Louisville. And you were part of that Appalachian Highway. You ended up in Louisville. So I grew up in Louisville, but we were in the country back in Menifee County all the time. You married someone, my mom, your wife, my mom, Joanne Brewer, who was from the other side of Dan Ridge. So all my family's there, and we spent a lot of time up there. And even though I grew up in Louisville, 2 hours away in a city, I spent so much time up there and ended up marrying a girl from Frenchburg. So I have a lot of roots in Frenchburg. And a lot of that, as Melanie and I started dating, and Melanie Farrell, anybody wondering who it is, we started dating, that brought me into her family. And got married, and you meet the men and her family, uncles or whoever, or just socializing different circles. And I guess every man from up there that I've met that was your generation within 15 years, up older or younger, I guess, or whatever, would always speak in extremely high regard of Pugh Brothers Garage. And he said, "Oh man, I used to go down there, and JP," and that's what really framed my picture of Pugh Brothers Garage as much as anything, is just hearing how other people spoke about Pugh Brothers Garage, and then just having kind of an idea from growing up, what that part of the world that you grew up in would be like, kind of. And so that's where I get a little bit of my picture, a whole lot of my picture of JP being such an influential person, and that garage being such an influential place for the county. I was just going to share that before we finished.
Well, I've got a couple more little things. I ran into a guy, didn't run into him. He was the same place I was 3 weeks ago, maybe. And he pulled in and I recognized him. And this guy just had a birthday because his son put it on Facebook, 90 years old. And I walked over to the car and I said, I think I know you. He said, well, I'm so-and-so's daddy. That's how he introduced himself. Because he knew, I said, well, I knew you as, and called his name. I said, my dad was Hobart Pugh. Absolutely tickled him into death to talk about that for me. He said, oh, I remember you now. You just young fella. Said, we've had a lot of discussions around that old stove up there in the Pugh Brothers Garage. So people still remember it, the ones that still left, that were there on a regular basis. And it was unique. It was a unique place, and it had unique management skills. Even though one guy, he's dead now, and he'd talk so bad about the Pugh Brothers Garage being overpriced and just hateful old people and overpriced. Wouldn't take a vehicle anywhere in the world except Pugh Brothers Garage, and just sit and visit with them. You had some of that. You have that everywhere today too. That's just human nature. But he liked to talk about them, but he knows there's the best he could get to do the job he wanted done.
So I have another question for you. I forgot, I may have cut you off. So for people who don't know, you spent 20 years building tractors or around tractors, working for National Harvester on assembly line, and then went to work for Toyota in inspection operations, and eventually retired from Toyota as an assistant manager of quality assurance. My point is to say, if anybody knows a lot about combustion engines, gasoline powered combustion engines and transportation, tractor, vehicle, there's a lot of similarity between a four-wheeled tractor and a four-wheeled car or truck. It's you. So, and I would say you're an expert compared to your average person about combustion engine and car, truck, tractor stuff. So with that kind of coming from an authoritative view, just how good was JP as a mechanic?
Well, I'll put it that I can give you some, for instance, and then the audience can judge. My judgment is the best. He was top notch. He even had a analytical machine down there. And this is before these cars didn't have computers and chips and all that stuff. But he had this machine that would tell you if what the spark plug was doing, what the wires were doing, what the alternator was doing, or generator, wasn't any alternators back then, what the generators were doing, what the everything. I mean, basically, like you plug up a thing now and they tell you, they give you a code. This thing did that, except there's a great big cabinet, had great big dials, and and he depended on that some. But JP was a guy that could, and you had to time cars back then when you tuned them up, put points in, and he could do that by ear. He always checked himself with a timing light, but he got done. But he always done it by ear. He could adjust the carburetor, which you had to do ever so often. He could do that by ear. And then he put a vacuum gauge on and confirm his work. But
let me ask you a question about the carburetor. I know from my own experience having small engine stuff, motorcycles and stuff like that, how much of a pain in the butt a carburetor can be to keep. So were those vehicles kind of like that, where they were just kind of pain to keep
Yeah, but they were simple. They were on the old engines. They were simple. Now, when you got up to where I was driving stuff, and Roger, my cousin, driving stuff, and the 4 barrels was a little bit more. But I'll tell you how good JP was. I had a 1968 big block Chevelle, 396 Chevelle. And I'd take it, I'd be in, and Roger would say, let me do a super tune on this. And he would. And JP would walk over and say, well, did you make it any better? Roger said, yep, I think I have. And this make the car run a whole lot faster when they do this. And JP'd crawl under that hood. And he told Roger was one time, he said, go in there and get me my carb stuff. And he rejetted that. He put different jets in that carburetor right there on the outside of that garage. And he made it a whole lot better. And that's how good he was. Or if somebody come in with a lawnmower, like the carburetors you're talking about, gas wasn't as good back then as it is now either. And he could make that lawnmower like new. He loaned me and Joanne our first lawnmower when we got married. It was a Lawn Boy 2-cycle, 1940, maybe. But he loaned it to me. He said, you take it till you get you a lawnmower. But the carburetor's leaking gas. And he sat there and took that carburetor off and fixed it to where it didn't leak gas anymore. That's how good he was. And we took that lawnmower and used it at least one season in I guess in Clarksville, in that apartment we was in. Didn't have a big yard, but it wasn't 16-inch, maybe a 15, 16-inch lawnmower. But he fixed it where we used it, and it was old then. Or one other thing about the Pugh Brothers Garage, they were innovative in a way, not like you'd think of a computerized person making a big, but the first gas-powered lawnmowers in Menifee County were built by Pugh Brothers Garage. Every Pugh brother had one, every one. And then they sold some. Of course, if one Pugh gets something, all Pughs get something. That's just the way it was, but it ain't that way anymore, but it was that way. And they built, my dad was the welder on them, and they built the frame out of angle iron, used plow handles, wooden plow handles to push it with, and used a gasoline washing machine motors to run it. Maytag made washing machine with a gasoline motor on it. Had a kick start on it. And they had that, they put them on and had a little gearbox to reduce the change the spindle speed. And that's what we mowed with forever. So they made, I don't know how many of them made, but then people want them. Every old man come in there, well, no young men back then wanted one. So they made them. I don't know why they never did refine them. And then Western Auto started getting lawnmowers in. This has been probably late 50s. And so, they made stuff too, with as the need arose. But the first
they could fabricate what they couldn't. They needed something, they couldn't buy it, they could fabricate it.
They could make it, yep. And to close out, there's a lot more could be said, but that would be more detail. But I want to say this, about JP. All them Pugh brothers were good. I don't know of a bad one out there. I hear all of them was a little bit wild growing up. I've heard that. Never did see any of them that way, but I heard that. As in Letcher County, not in Menifee County. And but as a teenager, I could go to any of them. They'd try to loan you money if you was going out on a, going to a ball game. It didn't matter. Every one of them. And but JP was a unique individual. And I'm going to say this, a lot of people probably would wish I didn't, but I'm going to, because I want to. JP was a cusser. He cussed. He cussed a lot. He cussed he didn't use these words like he used today, but he is a cusser. There's 3 people I know of cussed like him, that's all. Him, Vic Brewer, he was up there, all of the good friends, up there all the time. And a guy I worked with in the National Horse, they were cussers, not black gardeners, not this soft stuff. And JP, when he was baptized and came out of that water, never, ever, ever heard him say anything off color. Never another cuss word in his life that I'm aware of. And I was around him a lot. That's how JP was. When he had been studying the Bible, he always did read the Bible, but he had been studying it. And this preacher from up in the mountains was down there and helped him understand some things he had mixed up in his mind about. But he got straightened up in his mind. He became a Christian, never cussed again in his life. One other thing I'm going to tell that probably most people don't know, the back of the parts department in that garage, back in that day, there were garage calendars, mechanics calendars.
With girls on them?
Girls on.
Because I in my days working in body shop and stuff, those calendars always had girls on them.
they had girls on them. Usually a girl was sitting on a car fender. And he had them from back in the 40s, and he had them lined up, sequential by year. And they was all from the same parts house. And some of them were naked, totally.
Yeah.
But there wasn't anybody allowed back in there but men and boys. And when he got baptized, the next time I was down there, them calendars were gone. I don't know where they went, and I don't know what he done with them. I told your mommy a while ago, I always suspected, and I wasn't going to ask him, always suspected that after work one day, he locked them front doors, and they took him out back to burn. Don't know that for a fact, but they had a burn pile out there.
Yeah.
But those 2 things stand out in my mind to seal the deal of what JP was. When he set his mind to what, even before he became Christian, he's a good man. He was a good man. Did a lot of good for a lot of people. But he's still a changed man after he became Christian.
Yeah. Was he the first one of those boys, those brothers?
Huh?
Was he the first one to become a Christian of the brothers?
No, Daddy and Homer and Irvin all did. Long time ago. Back as far as I can remember. JP didn't. JP, Paul Pugh was from the old Baptist belief. What do you call that, Joanne? Basically where they went to a different church every, make a rotation, different churches on different Sundays.
Yeah.
And JP had that in his mind from growing up with it,
Yeah.
to reading the Bible and saying, that ain't what I think.
Yeah.
So he had a big change. He did a big change before he was ever baptized. He was, I don't know how old he was. I remember when it happened. And but those two things that stood out in my mind were instant, just very noticeably instant when he did it. So that, and that don't have anything to do with Pugh Brothers Garage.
Oh, I
But
think Pugh Brothers Garage and JP are almost one in this, not one in the same, but you can't talk
They-
Pugh Brothers Garage without talking JP for sure.
They are one and the same. And he, like I said, he was a good man before that. A very good man to a lot of people. But as far as the garage, it was a needed institution at that time. I don't even know if it
Sounds
could
like
be.
a needed institution with the right guy running it, maybe.
Yeah, with the right person. There's others tried, but
Now, let me, as we're kind of winding down here, and we can always do, like, if you capture these stories and you want to, we can do follow up or whatever. But did the garage just close when JP hung it up, or did the change in things in the environment force it out, or technology, or what was the deal there?
everything changed, everything. My dad retired when he could. He got black lung and Social Security disability, and he retired. I'm sure the Frog Bashford retired when they started blacktopping all them roads up there. Frog Bashford, instead of going to a tandem and triaxle trucks, he wouldn't do it. He said, "You younger people need to do that." And there's one guy there did, but he wouldn't haul. You couldn't haul enough blacktop in them little trucks. He had just single axle dump truck, and you couldn't haul enough blacktop in them, make it worth your time. But you needed them little trucks hauling the gravel because so many of the roads were little, narrow. And I don't know telling how many of the boys turned over them trucks driving for him over the years. But he quit, so there went a big part of the business. The cars changed. You know, the electronics started coming out, and the fuel systems started coming out, and those type of things. And you quit greasing cars, and just a lot of things were changing. And so JP stayed on and just did piddle work after, and the school buses. Now he maintained school buses for a while after that. But he retired, shut it down. And I went and talked to him about buying it one time. He made me a good price on it, and I was about halfway scared to do it. Wish I had it now, but and then he got bored. He couldn't, just sitting on the porch rocking. That's what he did. And he went back and opened it up and just went down there and built a bar. And it's like fall, winter time. And all these old men that had been coming, sitting there around there for 30 years, 40 years, come back, and they just sit around and talk. And he kept it open that way for, he didn't do anything. He might fix something for somebody, but that actually needed, but he didn't do it. He just there. So they kept it going like that. And a lot of his older customers come and visit, you know, about every day. Somebody there every day. So that happened for a year or two, and then he got to, he wasn't capable of doing it anymore. He got, I forget what's wrong with him, Joey. I forget what killed him now, but it started working on him. So he had to quit and go back home. And they that was the end of it. The county bought it, used it as a county. They did a lot of modifications in it, and it don't look the same inside as it used to. Looks like it's about half as big as it used to be. You know, growing up, something is always bigger than when you get older. And then the county built a new one up on top of the hill and sold it. I forget the guy's name that bought it, but I stopped in there the other day, and the guy that works for him took me a tour upstairs and all over. And I'm going back someday and try to get video and try to spot where the different functions in the garage took place, just for historical reasons.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing. I was just going to ask, since your spotter's still sitting there, you mentioned your '68 Chevelle. I was going to ask her if she wanted to share what her daddy thought about that car, or what her daddy said about that car. You don't have to. She may not want to.
She's eating now.
I don't remember.
You don't remember what you said your daddy said about that car?
That Doug could kill me in it sometime.
That's it.
She was talking.
The directors don't usually get on camera.
we was talking about it just the other day. All these, I went took my car down to Toyota South for Joanne's car, actually, and for service, and went through my school and sat. It was over 10 minutes sitting in the line of traffic, people and big old SUVs dropping their kids off at school, and school buses coming in there with 1 or 2 kids on it. And I thought that was so foolish. And then I got thinking, your mama used to take you all to school in a big block Chevelle with Smitty mufflers on it. I thought, there's no difference. There's no difference in taking a Escalade or a Lexus SUV.
Wonder I had to kill myself in it.
The Escalade probably gets better gas mileage. So
Probably, yeah.
So anyways, we can follow up if you want to if you come up with other memories, but this has been really interesting for me. I hope it is for people who maybe just stagger across the video.
One more thing. Have you got a minute?
Yeah, I do.
One of Homer's jobs after the lawnmowers came out. You remember? I remember when you didn't have lawnmowers, you tied the cow up in the front yard or the horse or whatever, or used a grass hook to cut it down. But when the lawnmowers came out, Western Auto, Paul Cash had Western Auto, and it was stopped. And he lined them lawnmowers up out there, and everybody got a lawnmower. Well, they come to Pugh Brothers Garage to have them sharpened. And Homer was the guy that sharpened. And he had him, he made a little belt sander. You can't sharpen a lawnmower and do any good on a grinding wheel, on a grinder. And so he made him a belt sander, about 1 inch wide belt on it. And he'd do a good job. Well, I remember I was in there one time and some guy come in and Homer said, no, said, you need to go up there and get you a new blade and put on. And the guy said, well, that looks just exactly like, that looks like a new blade there. Homer said, I've sharpened that every how many times. And he said, that's tempered steel. And every time I sharpen that blade, it gets hot and takes some temper out of it. And it's not worth sharpening. It won't last you 2 mowers till you have to do it again. Just go up there and buy you a blade and put on it. And I wonder how many people know that today, that the more you sharpen a lawnmower blade, the quicker it wears out.
Well, I will tell you this, there's not that many people sharpening their own lawnmower blades right today.
Well, they didn't there either. They brought
Yeah,
them.
they put them to the garage, yeah.
I have a guy sharpen mine anymore. I used to sharpen myself, but I don't anymore. But when you get and you use water to try to keep them from getting too hot, but that was one thing I just wonder how many people understand when they take so much temper out, they're no good anymore.
I don't know. But this is good. I think that it's been really interesting for me. I've learned some things I didn't know, and I hope that the Pughs and our family maybe throw this on, listen on their, don't watch it on your drive, but maybe listen to it while they're driving or just sitting around or wherever. And we'll be back and do another historical Pugh one here really soon.
One thing I learned from JP, I don't do it. If you use a tool, you put it back where you got it.
Well,
I'm not good at that.
you know, so sitting right here, I had to come outside so that everybody wouldn't have to be quiet for me. And I came out and had to turn around this way because it was so sunny. I'm in Florida. It was so sunny. It was lighting everything up. So I had to turn and face myself back to the wall so the sun wouldn't, so you'd be able to see me more than a shadow. And these have been sitting on this little outside bar for I don't know how long. I did not put them up. So I believe that, but I believe, and I don't know if this would have come from JP, what I do believe is you buy good equipment and you take care of it.
Yep.
So, all right. So we'll be back again. Thank you for spending so much time doing that.
No problem. Anytime.
All right.